from absolute delight to ultra cringe. So, in that way, in a few words, I can describe my feelings about the Chernobylite game from the Farm 51 studio. This game from the first minutes immerses us into a photorealistic exclusion zone, and it focuses on locations that are familiar to stalkers and connoisseurs of the zone. I was delighted with how many of the zone's objects were rendered realistically, and how well the level designers placed these objects in the locations. Moreover, they realized to topographically correct as many points of interest as possible. I got a special pleasure when I saw a grapple bucket, which is known to researchers of the zone as the Wise of Death. The Pripyat Stele, the cafe at the river station, the kindergarten in the village of Kopachi, and the medical unit 126. This is by far the best and the most visually stunning rendition of the zone in the PC gaming I have seen. However, I was a little disappointed that the developers didn't make the basement of the medical unit 126. It would have been very atmospheric to be able to wander through the creepiest rooms of this place and look into the room with the fireman's radioactive belongings. In addition, the developers already had a location similar to this basement, the underground communications of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Many stalkers interested in the exclusion zone would appreciate the mention of this place. Among the disadvantages of the locations, I can include the radiation danger signs posted absolutely everywhere. I understand that the developers wanted to add an atmosphere, like you are in the Chernobyl zone, don't forget about it. But this is a feature of the zone, that there are signs of radiation danger in certain hotspots places, with a greatly increased level of radiation pollution. In Chernobylite, these are just signs, only decor. These signs often make sense at the edges of the game maps. There are very high contamination levels to the limit player from going outside the playing area, and there are so many of those signs that at every turn, you definitely won't miss it. As it turned out, the dosimeter in the game is also an element of decor, if we don't consider its other functions, such as searching for loot using an electromagnetic pulse. If you stand at the point, its values will constantly jump in the range from 0 to 2 or even 3 units. Real dosimeters also show jumps, but within a certain value. They are more like adjustments. In that case, the dosimeter just shows random numbers. And one more interesting detail that will surely attract the attention of the attentive player. Just look at the dimensions of this truck cap. Not even considering the fact that there are two of them here, or on this helicopter. Apparently it is half a head shorter than our main character, Igor. Maybe it is a helicopter for CAT's Air Forces, or the developers were in a hurry and left such a mini transport without fixing their measures. I liked the music in the game at first, especially in moments of tension and battles with mutants, but the more you play, the more this annoying guitar melody starts to bother you. In general, I had the impression that I was in a music school, where students endlessly played the same melodies. It is the same as the violin solo that accompanies the story of Tatiana, Igor's wife. At first, this melody is perceived normally, but when the damn violin starts playing for the 100,000th time, you want to turn off the game. From my gaming experience, I can say that the music should be so unobtrusive that the player can run for hours in the same location. And he didn't have the desire to throw away the headphones because of the sickening chirping. For example, in Stalker, the music is very suitable for each location and it seems that dissolves the player in itself. Music becomes part of the location, an integral part. Thanks to the music, the player feels the level of tension and the general atmosphere of the area. In Chernobylite, after an hour of playing, you want to turn off the sound. Now, about the characters. You get the impression that you got into a trash party of cosplayers. Otherwise, it is difficult to explain the strangeness of each of the characters. The most adequate is Oliver, who keeps himself in a cold mind and, at least, doesn't lose his temper like Mikhailo. He constantly screams and cries that everything and everyone must be destroyed, shot and split into atoms.
We gouged out their fucking eyes and cut off their ears. This time, NAR's hurting now, at least for a couple of days.
The Tarakan is insane old man who decided that he lives in a fairy tale, the Nutcracker, and everything around him is a game of a Red King.
You've come a long way to die, NAR rat, or whoever you are. I am a man of faith. It gives me no pleasure taking lives, not even the lives of dirty little rodents like you.
Sashko is, in my opinion, the craziest character in general, who shakes my hello to animators, as if he always under the influence of psychotropic substances. His motivation is also pretty vague up to a point, but even after it becomes clear, it still feels like wishful thinking. Olga, like Oliver, is more or less adequate and her character didn't cause any special questions. But the funniest character is Yevgeny, a local trader who constantly listens to some music abomination. This is just cringe on an interplanetary scale, and his cacophony in the tape recorder is a separate type of interrogation and abuse. Actually, even the characters themselves say this. What about the plot and gameplay? Chernobylite is something between a text quest and loot-craft horror. Most of the time we explored the locations of the zone, looking for photos of Igor's missing wife and documents related to the secret Chernobylite project, and craft and equipped our base. It is interesting, but not everyone will appreciate it because wandering for hours through the Red Forest or the Pripyat streets in search of a piece of paper or a photo. This is something that only fans of the Chernobyl zone will like. And don't count on cool shootouts and action. You can't even shoot from the hip here. This is the first time I have encountered this in the games. I don't like love stories, because usually they are not very organically woven into the games. The only story that touched at least a little is Anya and Artyom in Metro Exodus. The plot itself drags, because each mission, each character recruited into the team, and each piece of information found shed more and more light on this confusing story. Igor is looking for any information about Tatiana's disappearance in 1986, along the way helping companions, exposes traitors, and rescues some characters. In addition, he finds out what kind of mineral Chernobylite is, and exactly what experiments are conducted on it by NAR, bad paramilitary guys led by scientists. The horror elements made me happy, and it is not stupid monsters crawling out of the bushes, like in most horror movies.
Do you have open graves to find girls to fall in love with, Igor?
These are really creepy moments that make the blood run cold. The best example is the echoes of the Chernobyl tragedy.
Городской совет народных депутатов. Неблагоприятная радиационная обстановка.
Some reviewers have criticized the mechanics of changing key decisions. If the hero dies, he ends up at the afterlife, where he can change the course of the game and float to the past. But I think it is quite an interesting and practical move. I liked it a lot more than if I just loaded the last save. In addition to the cringe characters, I would also highlight the voice acting and dialogues. Well, this is not how people communicate.
Listen, Jesus, I'm so sorry, Olivier. Anton was... he was a good man.
Who was that
Hell if I know. Somehow he used the negative energy of the Chernobylite to teleport. Now, to confirm this theory...
Stop. That doesn't matter right now. Can he get to us here? And where is here exactly?
As if in a drama theater of some kind, or in a book by an author who was paid for the number of printed words. It destroys the atmosphere and immersion in the game. You won't believe it when the characters communicate so vividly. The game has several voice options, and I played both. The Russian dubbing of the characters doesn't cause anything other than fierce cringe. Sashko's character roars in a recorded voice, trying for some reason to sound more brutal. What the hell? It causes such a facepalm that you can pierce the skull to the back of the head.
Он хочет тебя проверить, прежде чем решить, нравишься ты ему или нет. У этого психа что ни минута, то новая проверка. Ну хоть платит нормально.
So it's the character Mikhailo, who is hysterical and constantly playing with his voice. With the English dubbing, everything's such much better, but in it, the characters also play their dialogues too loudly.
Oh, that. Yeah, small miscalculation on my part. I really didn't know what was in those barrels. Shit. But it was worth it, right? We fisted those bastards hard. And you didn't hesitate even once.
The final of the game is non-linear, quite unexpected and... no, I won't spoil it. And I liked its dynamics. Tense, without the right to make a wrong decision. By the way, I managed to pass the positive final. Although I doubted the decisive moment. I would advise to play for those who really love the Chernobyl zone and would like to walk around those places. I don't want to comment on the plot, because it has a lot of holes that are patched according to the one simple formula. Well, it's all because of Chernobylite.
Download the last file in the column, the one called Sweet Only Boy Will Meet Sugar Mom. Cool name, yeah? Execute the file, and voila! You got access to their database. Unless you screwed something up.